The Galactic Tyrant mocked our small ship until it became his only escape. The war fleet of Supreme Chancellor Vex'thor stretched across space like a steel constellation. 12,000 warships, each the size of a city, their hulls bristled with weapons that could crack planets. They hung in perfect formation around the dead moon of Threshkar, a graveyard world where Vex'thor had summoned Earth's representatives for what he called final negotiations. The translation was more honest: surrender terms. The human vessel appeared on their sensors as little more than a curiosity. It was called the Daisy Chain, a name that caused confused laughter among the alien bridge crews who could translate it. The ship itself was modest, barely 300 meters long, with smooth white hull plating and no visible weapon ports. It looked like a luxury yacht that had wandered into a military exercise. Navigation lights blinked cheerfully along its spine in soft amber and blue. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Vex'thor's flagship, the Supreme Chancellor watched the tiny vessel approach with something between amusement and disgust. He was massive even by his species standards, nearly 4 meters tall with chitinous armor that grew naturally from his exoskeleton. His face, if it could be called that, was a complex array of mandibles and sensor organs that glowed faintly red. 6 arms moved with practiced efficiency, each ending in claws that had personally executed 17 planetary governors. "They send this," he clicked in his native tongue, "to meet the greatest military force ever assembled." His tactical officer, a smaller member of his species named Kresh, tilted his head uncertainly. "Supreme Chancellor, our deep scans show the vessel has extensive shielding. The power signature is unusual. We cannot determine its armament." Vex'thor's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. Shielding means fear. They hide because they are fragile. This meeting is already over. He gestured with 2 arms toward the view screen. "Allow them to dock. I want to see their faces when I explain how their world will serve the Dominion." The daisy chain glided closer, its movements unnaturally smooth, almost organic. It avoided the designated docking port and instead positioned itself directly beneath the Dominion's primary command tower, a breach of protocol so severe that weapons officers tensed over their controls. "Chancellor," Kresh warned, "they are not following approach vectors." "Let them play," Vex'thor rumbled. "It will make the lesson sweeter." From the daisy chain, a single shuttle detached. It was even smaller, almost laughably so, carrying perhaps 6 occupants at most. It drifted toward the Dominion's main hangar with the casual pace of someone late to a dinner party. Inside the hangar, 300 soldiers stood at attention, weapons charged, armor gleaming. Automated defense turrets tracked the shuttle's descent. The air crackled with threat and ceremony. When the shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, the soldiers expected diplomats in formal attire, perhaps military officers prepared for intimidation. Instead, a single human stepped out. She was small, barely reaching 5.5 feet tall, wearing what appeared to be a simple gray jumpsuit with a patch on the shoulder that read, "Maintenance Division." Her hair was tied back in a practical ponytail. She carried a toolbox in one hand and what looked like a potted plant in the other. The plant had small white flowers, delicate and utterly out of place. She smiled pleasantly at the soldiers, their weapons, the turrets, and said in clear but accented universal standard, "Hi there, I'm Maya Santos. Is there somewhere I can set this down?" "It's a peace lily. Thought the ship could use some greenery." The silence that followed was profound. Kresh's voice came through the hangar speakers, sharp with confusion. "You are Earth's diplomatic representative?" Maya set the plant down gently on a nearby cargo container. "Oh no, I'm an engineer. Our diplomats are back home. They figured this conversation needed a different approach." She opened her toolbox and began rummaging through it. "Is the Chancellor ready? I've got about 45 minutes before I need to recalibrate the daisy chain's core." The soldiers exchanged glances. One made a gesture that meant madness in their culture. Maya was escorted through corridors designed to dwarf and intimidate. The ceilings stretched 30 meters high. The walls were dark metal etched with the names of conquered worlds. Holographic displays showed footage of planetary sieges, cities burning, populations fleeing. It was a museum of dominance. Maya barely glanced at them. She was too busy examining junction boxes, running her fingers along wall panels, occasionally stopping to peer at ventilation grates. Once she pulled out a small device from her toolbox and held it near a power conduit, nodding to herself when it beeped. "Interesting routing," she muttered. "Redundant but inefficient. You're losing about 12% to heat bleed." A guard prodded her forward with the tip of his weapon. She shrugged apologetically and kept walking. The throne chamber was designed to crush spirits. It was a vast sphere of polished black stone, perfectly smooth, with the throne itself suspended in the center on a platform that floated without visible support. Vex'thor sat there, his massive form radiating menace, surrounded by holographic displays showing his fleet, his armies, his conquered territories. Above him, a projection of Earth rotated slowly, already marked with red targeting vectors. Maya stepped onto the platform, toolbox in hand, and looked around with genuine interest. "Gravitational suspension? That's clever. Must take enormous power to maintain. What's your efficiency rating?" Vex'thor's mandibles spread wide, a threat display that had preceded the death of countless beings. "A human. You stand before the Supreme Chancellor of the Dominion. You will address me with the proper—" "Yeah, sorry about that," Maya interrupted, pulling out a handheld scanner. "Protocol stuff isn't really my department. I'm just here to check on something." She pointed the scanner at the throne, then at the floor, then at the ceiling. The device beeped rhythmically. "Huh, that's weird." The chamber fell silent except for the beeping. Vex'thor leaned forward slowly. "Explain yourself, insect." Maya looked up, seemed to realize the offense, and smiled apologetically. "Oh, right, sorry. It's just, my ship detected some unusual resonance patterns coming from your flagship. Nothing dangerous, probably just harmonic interference, but I wanted to make sure before we started talking. You know how it is. Safety first." She tapped the scanner. "Good news, though. Everything looks stable. We can chat now." Kresh's voice came from somewhere in the walls. "Supreme Chancellor, this is irregular. Should we remove her?" Vex'thor raised a claw, his eyes fixed on Maya. "No. Let the humans speak. I want to understand what madness drives your species to send a technician to a war council." Maya closed her scanner and tucked it away. "Well, like I said, diplomats seemed wrong for this. Figured you'd just threaten them, they'd make counteroffers, you'd ignore those, and we'd all waste time. This way seemed more direct." "Direct," Vex'thor repeated, his voice like grinding stones. "You believe you can negotiate with tools and flowers?" "Negotiate?" Maya tilted her head. "No, I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to show you something." She set her toolbox down and opened it fully. Inside were dozens of small devices, each glowing with soft blue light. "These are resonators, harmonic frequency generators technically. We've been testing them for about 6 months now." "Weapons," Vex'thor said flatly. "Not exactly." Maya picked one up, turning it over in her hands. "They don't hurt anyone. They just talk to things. Metal, mostly. Hull plating, structural supports, power conduits. They find the natural frequency of whatever they're near and match it. Create a kind of connection." She placed the device on the floor of the platform. It made a soft chiming sound and began to pulse gently. "Your ships," Maya continued conversationally, "are incredibly well built. Strong, redundant systems, excellent engineering, but they all share certain design philosophies, standard Dominion construction protocols, same alloys, same structural patterns, same power distribution networks." She pulled out another resonator and placed it a meter from the first. "Which means they all share the same resonant frequencies." Kresh's voice cut through, sharp with alarm. "Chancellor, the device she placed is emitting a signal. It is connecting to our ship's infrastructure." Vex'thor's claws tensed. "Disable it." "We are trying. The signal is embedded in our own power grid. It is using our systems to amplify itself." Maya nodded as if this was completely expected. "Right. That's the connection part I mentioned. The resonators don't fight your systems. They become part of them. Makes them really hard to remove without shutting everything down." She looked up at Vex'thor. "Don't worry, though. They're not doing anything harmful. Just introducing themselves." "Remove her," Vex'thor commanded. "Disable the devices. Purge all—" The lights flickered. Not dramatically, just a brief dimming, like a momentary brownout. But in a ship that had never, in its 50 years of service, experienced a single power irregularity, It was profound. Maya winced sympathetically. Yeah, that's the handshake protocol. Takes a second for the systems to adjust. Should stabilize in 3, 2, 1. The lights returned to normal. There we go, Maya said brightly. Now your ship is part of the network. Vex'thor rose from his throne, his full height towering over the human. What have you done? Created a neural mesh, Maya said, her tone still casual, like she was explaining how to change a light bulb. Your flagship is now connected to every resonator we've placed over the last 6 months. And we've been busy. I think we're up to about 40,000 nodes now. Give or take. She pulled out a data pad and checked. Yeah, 41,307. They're all over the place. Asteroid bases, trade stations, diplomatic outposts, even a few on your supply depots. Everywhere your ships go, basically. Kresh's voice was strained now. Supreme Chancellor, I am detecting similar devices active on 68% of our fleet. They have been dormant until now. The human's device activated them simultaneously. Maya nodded. Yep, they're all saying hi to each other now. It's kind of beautiful if you think about it. All that metal, all those ships suddenly aware of each other in a way they never were before. Vex'thor's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. You have sabotaged my fleet. No, Maya said firmly, her casual tone dropping slightly. I've connected it. There's a difference. Your ships work fine. Better than fine, actually. The resonators optimize power flow, reduce stress on structural joints, even improve sensor efficiency by about 3%. Your engineers will probably send me a thank you note once they notice. Then what is your purpose? Maya looked at him directly for the first time, and her eyes, though human and soft, carried something steel beneath. To show you that we're already inside, not with soldiers or weapons, but with understanding. We studied your ships, learned how they breathe, how they think, and now we're part of them. She gestured at the throne room around them. This flagship, Chancellor, is the most powerful vessel in your armada. It coordinates fleet movements, broadcasts command orders, processes battlefield data. It's the brain of your military. She paused. And right now, it's humming our frequency. The beeping of her scanner had been so constant in the background that everyone had stopped noticing it. Now, as silence fell, it became clear that the beeping had synchronized with something else, a deep, almost subliminal vibration running through the ship's hull. Vex'thor felt it in his bones, a rhythmic pulse that matched no Dominion design protocol. Turn it off, he said quietly. Can't, Maya replied. It's not like a switch. The resonators are self-sustaining now. They pull power from the ships themselves, use it to maintain the network. You could try to remove them, but there are thousands, and they're woven into your infrastructure. Plus, destroying them might cause harmonic feedback. Your engineers would understand the risk better than me, but let's just say it wouldn't be great for hull integrity. Kresh appeared on the platform, having abandoned his post to confront the threat directly. This is an act of war. Maya shook her head. No. If we wanted war, we'd have weaponized the resonators, made them overload your reactors, collapse your shields, whatever. But we didn't. Because we're not here to destroy you. We're here to change the terms. Vex'thor's voice dropped to a growl. Explain. Maya took a breath. You brought 12,000 ships to intimidate us. You summoned us here to dictate surrender. You assumed we'd have no choice but to accept because we're smaller, newer, weaker. She gestured at the holographic Earth still rotating above them. But you forgot something. Humans are really, really good at getting into places we're not supposed to be. And once we're in, we're almost impossible to remove. She tapped her toolbox with her foot. These resonators aren't just in your fleet. They're in every major Dominion installation, your supply chains, your communication arrays, your planetary defense grids. Everywhere you've allowed trade or maintenance or diplomatic contact over the past year, we've been there. Not stealing, not sabotaging, just connecting. The holographic displays around Vex'thor began flickering, then reorganized themselves without input. They now showed a new image, a web of blue light stretching across Dominion space, connecting ships, stations, worlds, tens of thousands of connection points, all pulsing in synchronization. We call it the Harmony Network, Maya said softly. And as of about 2 minutes ago, when you let me activate it, The network is live. Vex'thor stared at the display, his mind racing through implications. You cannot control my fleet with this. Our security protocols are excellent, Maya interrupted. We can't fire your weapons or take over navigation. That was never the point. But we can do something else, something you never considered. She pulled out her datapad and tapped a command. Across the entire Dominion fleet, every ship's intercom system activated simultaneously. But instead of commands or alarms, they broadcast something else. Music. Soft, gentle, unmistakably human. A piano melody, simple and melancholic, accompanied by a woman's voice singing in a language most of the alien crew didn't understand. But they felt it. The emotion carried across species, across the vast differences in biology and culture. It was a song about home, about longing, about the spaces between stars where loneliness lived. Soldiers stopped mid-patrol. Bridge officers looked up from their stations. In thousands of ships, millions of beings heard human music for the first time, not as a curiosity or entertainment, but as a direct message playing through their own trusted systems. The song lasted 90 seconds. When it ended, the silence was profound. Vex'thor's voice was barely a whisper. "What are you doing?" Maya looked up at him, and for the first time, her expression held something other than calm efficiency. It held sadness. "Showing you that we're not afraid of you. But more importantly, showing your people that maybe they don't need to be afraid of us either." She tapped another command. "The Harmony Network isn't a weapon, Chancellor. It's a bridge. Right now, every member of your fleet has access to human literature, music, philosophy, history. Not propaganda, not military intelligence, just culture. The things we make that have nothing to do with war." Kresh had gone very still. "Why?" Because, Maya said, you can't exterminate something you've come to understand. You can't commit genocide against people whose poetry your soldiers have read, whose songs your children hum, whose stories your officers discuss during long watches. She closed her toolbox. "We're not trying to conquer you. We're trying to make conquering us emotionally impossible." Vex'thor's claws scraped against the throne's armrest. "That is manipulation, psychological warfare." "Maybe," Maya admitted, "but it's also an invitation. You wanted to make Earth part of your dominion through force. We're offering to make the dominion part of Earth through choice." She gestured at the web of light. "Every node in this network can transmit both ways. Your people can share their culture with us too. Their music, their stories, their perspectives. For the first time, your empire and our world can actually talk to each other without weapons or threats." "And if I refuse?" Vex'thor asked. "If I order this network destroyed, consequences be damned?" Maya met his gaze steadily. "Then you'll spend years tearing apart your own infrastructure, creating chaos in your fleet, all while your people wonder why you're so afraid of a few songs and stories. And by the time you're done, they'll have already been changed by what they've heard." She paused. "Or you could let it continue and see what happens when understanding replaces fear." The throne room fell into a tense silence. Around them, the Dominion's greatest military asset hummed with a frequency that hadn't existed an hour before. Finally, Kresh spoke, his voice uncertain. "Chancellor, I am receiving reports from across the fleet. Crew members are requesting more access to the human database. They want to know what else is there." Vex'thor didn't respond immediately. He was staring at the web of light, watching it pulse like a living thing, connecting his empire in ways he'd never intended or imagined. "You have made my fleet vulnerable," he said finally. "No," Maya replied. "I've made it curious. There's a difference." She picked up her toolbox and turned toward the platform's exit. "I should get back to my ship. The daisy chain's core really does need recalibration." She paused at the edge. "Oh, one more thing. The resonators have a secondary function. If any ship in your fleet moves to attack Earth or our colonies, every other ship in the network will know instantly. Not because we'll tell them, but because the ships themselves will broadcast it. Your own fleet will become witnesses to any aggression." She smiled, but it wasn't entirely friendly. "Try explaining to your crews why you're attacking the people whose music they've been enjoying. I'm betting that conversation goes differently than you'd expect." You have committed an act of invasion without firing a shot, Vex'thor said, his voice heavy with something that might have been respect. We call it cultural exchange, Maya replied. You called it negotiations, potato. She gave a small wave. Take care, Chancellor, and seriously, look into that heat bleed problem. It's costing you efficiency. As Maya walked back through the corridors toward the hangar, escorted by confused and unsettled guards, something extraordinary was happening across the Dominion fleet. In mess halls, crew members gathered around displays showing human films. In quarters, soldiers read translated human books with fascination. On bridge observation decks, officers listened to human music and found themselves moved by emotions they couldn't name. The invasion had already begun. It just looked nothing like anyone had expected. Back in the throne room, Vex'thor sat alone, staring at the web of light that now defined his empire. Kresh approached cautiously. Orders, Supreme Chancellor? Vex'thor was silent for a long time. Finally, he gestured at the display. Access the human database. I want to understand what they have done. Which section, Chancellor? All of it. Vex'thor leaned back in his throne, feeling the subtle vibration of the resonators humming through his ship's bones. If we are to be connected to these humans, I must know who they truly are. Kresh hesitated. And the invasion of Earth? Postponed, Vex'thor said quietly. Indefinitely. The daisy chain departed from the Dominion flagship 90 minutes later, its cheerful navigation lights blinking a farewell. No weapons fired, no threats were exchanged. The mighty war fleet simply watched it go, 12,000 ships humming with a new frequency, connected by threads of understanding they couldn't quite resist exploring. On the bridge of the daisy chain, Maya set her toolbox down and stretched. Her co-pilot, a younger man named Chen, looked at her with undisguised awe. Did that actually just work? Maya pulled out the peace lily she'd left in the hangar, now retrieved, and set it on the console. Define work. We didn't stop the war. We just made it complicated. Complicated how? She smiled, watching the Dominion fleet shrink on their view screen. Complicated like trying to hate someone after you've heard them laugh. Complicated like declaring war on a people whose children's lullabies your children are learning. Complicated like pulling a trigger when the person on the other end just shared their recipe for soup. Chen shook his head in wonder. Command is going to lose their minds when they hear about this. Probably, Maya agreed. She tapped a control, and soft music filled the bridge, the same song she'd broadcast to the Dominion fleet. But you know what? I think it'll be worth it. As the daisy chain accelerated away, leaving the war fleet behind, something unprecedented happened. One by one, ships in the Dominion Armada began broadcasting their own music. Alien compositions, strange and beautiful, sharing their cultures in return. The void between Earth and the Dominion, once empty and hostile, began filling with sound. 47 hours later, Vex'thor sat in his private quarters reviewing reports. His tactical officers had compiled analysis of the Harmony network's impact. The conclusions were disturbing. Fleet morale had improved by 18%. Interspecies conflicts among crew had dropped by 32%. Efficiency in non-combat operations had increased measurably. And perhaps most alarming, when polled anonymously, 63% of the fleet expressed interest in visiting Earth for cultural exchange. His empire was being conquered by curiosity. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Vex'thor accepted it, and Maya's face appeared on his screen. She was in what looked like a small apartment, the peace lily visible on a shelf behind her. Chancellor, she said with a nod, hope I'm not interrupting. You have interrupted everything, he replied, but there was no heat in his voice. What do you want, engineer? Just checking in, making sure the resonators are functioning properly. Any issues? Vex'thor considered lying, but found himself unwilling. They function perfectly, too perfectly. My ships operate better now than before. Maya smiled. Good, that was the idea. Can't have the network failing and causing problems. Bad for relations. Relations, Vex'thor repeated the word like it was foreign. We are not allies, human. No, Maya agreed, but we're not enemies either, not anymore. We're something new, something that doesn't have a word yet. She tilted her head. Give it time. Your linguists will come up with something. Vex'thor's mandibles clicked softly, a sound of reluctant amusement. My strategists tell me that removing your network would require dismantling 30% of my fleet's infrastructure. They estimate 2 years of work and catastrophic operational disruption. Sounds about right, Maya said. Sorry about that. We did try to warn you it would be hard to remove. You did not warn me it would be impossible to want to remove. Maya's expression softened. That's the thing about connection, Chancellor. Once you start understanding someone, really understanding them, isolation starts feeling like loss. She paused. Your people are listening to our music, reading our books, laughing at our jokes. Can you really order them to stop? Vex'thor was quiet for a long moment. This is not how empires function. Maybe that's the problem, Maya said gently. Maybe empires are the wrong model. Maybe we need something else, something more like a network. Your species is dangerous, Vex'thor said, but it sounded almost like admiration. You wage war through understanding. We wage peace, Maya corrected. It just looks like war to people who only understand force. She glanced at something off-screen. I should go. Engineering shift in 20 minutes, but Chancellor, one last thing. What? Thank you for not shooting me when I activated the network. That could have gone badly. Vex'thor's laugh was like grinding stones, but genuine. If I had, I would never have understood what you were truly doing. I would have missed the entire point. And what was the point? Maya asked. That conquest is temporary, Vex'thor said slowly, working through the thought. But culture is eternal. You did not make me weaker. You made isolation impossible. Maya grinned. Now you're getting it. Talk soon, Chancellor. The transmission ended, leaving Vex'thor alone with his thoughts and the gentle hum of human resonators woven through his ship's bones. Across the Dominion, the transformation was subtle but inexorable. Soldiers requested human literature for their downtime. Officers incorporated human philosophical concepts into their strategic thinking. Children in Dominion colonies began singing songs in multiple languages, blending cultures without permission or formal treaty. The empire had not fallen, but it had become porous, permeable, changed. And on Earth, the news spread quietly through diplomatic channels. No grand announcement, no triumphant declarations. Just a simple message from Maya's engineering division to high command. Network stable. Cultural exchange proceeding naturally. Recommend continued passive integration. In a secure facility beneath Geneva, the actual diplomats who had designed Operation Harmony gathered to review the results. Maya's performance had been perfect. The engineering cover story had disarmed Dominion suspicions. The resonators, designed by humanity's best physicists and psychologists working together, had done exactly what they were meant to do: create connection, not control. Ambassador Zhao, the architect of the operation, watched recordings of Dominion crew members accessing human cultural databases. It's working better than projected, she said softly. They're not just consuming content, they're engaging with it, discussing it, creating derivative works. Her colleague, Ambassador Torres, nodded. Maya reported the Chancellor himself has accessed the database 73 times in 2 days. He's focusing on human philosophy and ethics, particularly texts about coexistence and mutual cooperation. Do we have contingencies if he figures out the full scope? Someone asked. Zhao smiled slightly. If he figures it out, he'll realize we didn't hide anything. The resonators do exactly what Maya said. They connect, they share, they create understanding. There's no secret weapon, no hidden control mechanism, just culture and a choice about what to do with it. That's the weapon, Torres said quietly. The choice itself. 3 months passed. The Dominion fleet remained at Threshkar, but it was no longer a war fleet. It had become something else, a gathering place where different species within the Empire came to experience human culture through the Harmony network, and where humans sent representatives to learn Dominion arts in return. Trade began naturally, then scientific exchange, then tourism. Vex'thor found himself in an impossible position. His empire had not been conquered, but it had been fundamentally altered. His authority remained intact, but his people's interests had shifted. They wanted to explore this new connection, not sever it. He could order the network's destruction, But such an order would be wildly unpopular and strategically disastrous. So he did something he had never done in 50 years of rule. He adapted. 6 months after Maya's visit, the Dominion formally proposed the Threshkar Accords, a framework for cultural and economic exchange between the Dominion and Earth. Not a surrender, not a merger, but a recognition of the connection that already existed. The document was written in 3 languages, signed on Maya's ship the Daisy Chain, and broadcast simultaneously across both civilizations. At the signing ceremony, Vex'thor faced Maya across a simple table. No throne room, no intimidation, just 2 beings who had fundamentally changed the relationship between their peoples. "You won," he said simply. "We connected," Maya replied. "There's a difference." "Perhaps." Vex'thor's mandibles formed what might have been a smile. "But I know what you did, engineer. You made war unthinkable by making peace inevitable. You weaponized curiosity." Maya's expression turned serious. "We shared ourselves, that's all. What your people chose to do with that was up to them. We just gave them options besides fear." "And if another empire threatens Earth?" Vex'thor asked. "Will you infiltrate them with your resonators and your music as well?" "If we have to," Maya admitted. "But honestly, we're hoping word gets around. Other empires are watching. What happened with you? They're seeing that connection worked better than conquest. Maybe they'll try the same approach. Maybe war becomes too complicated when everyone's listening to everyone else's songs." Vex'thor considered this. "You are creating a galaxy where conflict is drowned out by understanding." "We're trying," Maya said. "It's slow, it's messy, but it beats the alternative." The Chancellor extended one massive claw. Maya took it carefully, and they shook in the manner of human diplomacy, sealing an accord that neither species had imagined possible a year before. As the ceremony concluded and delegates mingled, sharing food and conversation, Maya stood at a viewport watching the Dominion fleet. It still numbered 12,000 ships, still represented enormous military power. But now those ships hummed with human frequencies, carried human culture in their databases, and housed crews who had learned to see Earth not as a target but as a partner. The Daisy Chain's captain, an older woman named Rodriguez, joined her at the viewport. "You changed the galaxy, Maya." "I changed one empire," Maya corrected. "The galaxy's a work in progress." "Always the engineer," Rodriguez said with a smile, "seeing everything as a system to optimize." Maya chuckled. "Guilty. But you know what? Empires are just systems, very complicated, very old systems, but systems nonetheless. And every system can be improved with the right connections. And if the connections fail," Maya's smile faded slightly, "then we learn, adapt, and try again. That's what humans do. We connect, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult." Rodriguez nodded toward the fleet. "What do you think happens next?" "Next?" Maya pulled out her datapad, checking the Harmony network status. It showed not just the Dominion ships, but new nodes spreading outward. Other empires, cautiously curious, were accepting resonators for testing. The web of light was growing. "Next, we see if understanding can spread faster than fear. We see if culture can build bridges faster than war can burn them." "That's optimistic." "That's human," Maya replied. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Vex'thor returned to his throne room. The space felt different now, less imposing, more contemplative. The holographic displays showed the same web of light Maya had first revealed, but it had grown exponentially. Where there had been thousands of nodes, there were now hundreds of thousands. The Harmony network had become the nervous system of an empire, and through it flowed art, music, philosophy, science, all the things that made civilizations more than just military forces. Kresh approached, carrying reports. "Chancellor, the outer territories are requesting additional human cultural liaisons. They want direct exchange programs, artists, teachers, engineers like the human Maya." "Approve them," Vex'thor said. "All of them." "Sir, our conservative factions are concerned about cultural contamination." Vex'thor's mandibles clicked sharply. "Tell them contamination is the wrong word. This is inoculation. The humans taught us something vital. Empires that cannot adapt become extinct. We are adapting. Some say we are surrendering our identity." No, Vex'thor said firmly. We are expanding it. There is a difference. He gestured at the web of light. This network the humans created, it does not erase Dominion culture, it amplifies it. For the first time, other species can truly understand us as we can understand them. That is not weakness, that is evolution. Kresh hesitated, then asked the question that had troubled him for months. Do you regret not destroying the network when you had the chance? Vex'thor looked at his advisor, then at the throne that had symbolized his absolute power, then at the viewport where stars shone unchanged. I regret that it took a human engineer to teach me that connection is stronger than conquest. But no, I do not regret the outcome. My empire is stronger now, not despite the network, but because of it. How can you be certain? Because, Vex'thor said, for the first time in our history, my people choose to stay, not because they fear me, but because they value what we have become. That is a foundation that cannot be shaken by rebellion or war. The humans gave us that. In the months and years that followed, the Harmony Network became the defining feature of an era. Other empires, watching the Dominion's transformation, faced a choice: resist and risk isolation, or adapt and join the growing web of connection. Most chose adaptation, though not always smoothly. There were setbacks, conflicts, misunderstandings. But slowly, inexorably, the galaxy changed. Trade routes became cultural highways. Former enemies found common ground in shared art. Species that had never communicated discovered they had similar philosophies expressed in different languages. Wars didn't end, human nature and alien nature being what they were, but they became harder to start and easier to resolve. And at the center of it all, impossible to remove without dismantling the entire structure, were Maya's resonators. Humanity's tiny seeds of connection, humming their frequency through the bones of countless ships, stations, and worlds. Maya herself remained an engineer, refusing promotions to diplomatic or command positions. She preferred working with her hands, designing new resonator variations, improving the network's efficiency, solving the endless small problems that arose when connecting vastly different civilizations. But she had become something else too, a symbol. The human who changed the galaxy with a toolbox and a peace lily. Years later, when historians tried to analyze the moment that shifted galactic culture from conquest to cooperation, they always came back to that meeting in Vex'thor's throne room. The tiny human and the massive tyrant facing each other across an impossible divide, and the bridge that was built not with weapons but with understanding. Children in Dominion schools learned about the Harmony Network alongside their military history, and were taught that sometimes the greatest strength was making enemies impossible rather than defeating them. Human children learned the same lessons, along with Dominion poetry and alien mathematical theories that reshaped human science. The galaxy had not achieved peace. That would always remain aspirational, something to work toward rather than claim as accomplished. But it had achieved something perhaps more valuable. The infrastructure for peace, the connections, the understanding, the countless small threads of culture and curiosity that made violence feel like tearing apart something precious. And in the end, that was what Maya had built with her resonators. Not a weapon, not a shield, but a web that caught entire civilizations and held them gently, teaching them to see each other clearly for the first time. The daisy chain still traveled the stars, carrying engineers and resonators to new places, weaving new connections into the ever-expanding network. Its cheerful navigation lights blinked through the dark, a reminder that sometimes the smallest vessels carried the most transformative cargo. Sometimes peace didn't arrive on warships. Sometimes it came in a toolbox carried by someone who understood that the strongest bridges were built from shared songs, shared stories, and the simple recognition that across all the vast differences of species and culture, the desire to understand and be understood was universal. The galaxy had learned to listen, and in listening, it had begun to change.